The 5 children disappeared on Christmas Eve, 1945. Not in a war, not overseas. In West Virginia, in their own home, in their own beds, on the most celebrated night of the year. The official explanation was fire. The house burned. The children burned with it. Case closed. But here is the problem. There were no bones. Not a fragment. Not a tooth. Not a single piece of evidence that 5 children ever burned in that house. And when the family started asking why, the answers they got made no sense. So they put up a billboard on the side of a highway with photographs of their missing children and left it there for decades, because they believed until the day they died that their kids were still alive. This is the Sodder case, and it is not over. George Sodder came to America from Italy in 1908. He was 23 years old, and he had nothing. By 1945, he had built a life in Fayetteville, West Virginia, a small town at the foot of the Appalachians. He ran a coal trucking business. He owned a house. He had a wife, Jennie, and 10 children. By any measure, George Sodder had made it. He was also not quiet about his opinions, including his opinions about Mussolini, the Italian dictator who had aligned Italy with Nazi Germany. George openly criticized Mussolini in conversations, at work, in the community. On the night of December 23rd, 1945, the Sodder family went to bed after a long Christmas Eve. The 5 youngest children, Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jennie, 8, and Betty, just 5 years old, had stayed up late and gone to sleep somewhere in the house. At approximately 1 a.m., Jennie Sodder was awakened by the phone ringing. A woman's voice on the other end laughed. Wrong number. Jennie hung up and noticed the downstairs was lit up with a strange orange glow. The house was on fire.
George woke immediately and got 6 of his children and Jennie out of the house. He went back in twice, trying to reach the 5 youngest. He couldn't get to them. The fire was moving too fast. He ran to get the ladder from the side of the house. It was gone. He had seen it there that day. He tried to move one of his trucks close enough to use as a platform to reach the upper windows. The truck wouldn't start. That same truck had worked fine hours earlier. He tried to call the fire department. The phone line was dead. By the time firefighters arrived, around 8 a.m., nearly 7 hours after the fire started, the house had burned to its foundation. The fire chief surveyed the scene and made his report. The 5 children had perished. Death by fire. Cause: faulty wiring. But here is where the case breaks open. Human bodies don't simply disappear in a house fire. Bones survive. Teeth survive. A professional crematorium requires temperatures above 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, sustained for 2 hours or more. A house fire does not come close. They searched the entire footprint of the house. They found no bones, no teeth, no remains of any kind belonging to 5 children. In the days after Christmas, multiple people in Fayetteville reported something that no one from the official investigation wanted to hear. A woman named Ida Crutchfield said she had been driving past the Sodder property on the night of the fire and saw the house ablaze. She also saw, clearly visible in the firelight, a group of children's faces looking out from the back seat of a passing car going in the opposite direction. When she saw the newspaper photos of the missing Sodder children the next morning, she recognized them. A motel owner, roughly 50 miles from Fayetteville, said a group of children matching the descriptions had stayed at her motel the day after Christmas, accompanied by adults she had never seen before. She said the children seemed frightened. George reported all of this to authorities. The investigation did not change. The phone repair company sent someone out after the fire. They discovered the telephone line had not burned. It had been cut from the outside before the fire started.
George and Jennie Sodder did what parents do when institutions fail them. They started investigating themselves. They hired private investigators. They wrote to the FBI. They wrote to the governor of West Virginia. One of those leads involved a man named Louis Galvano, who had visited George's business some months before the fire and made a comment about George's house and the wiring. When George later learned that Galvano had organized crime connections and remembered his public criticism of Mussolini in a community with Italian-American mob ties, he began to consider a possibility he had not considered before. He never proved it. In 1949, George had the property excavated. Workers found a human vertebra. It was sent to the Smithsonian Institution for analysis. Researchers determined that the vertebra had not been exposed to the temperatures of the fire, meaning it had been placed in the rubble after the fact. By whom? For what purpose? Unknown.
The family put up a billboard on Route 16, the main highway through Fayetteville. On it, photographs of Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty Sodder. Their ages if they were still living. A cash reward. The billboard stayed up for 35 years. In 1967, more than 20 years after the fire, Jennie Sodder received a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a photograph. The photograph showed a man in his mid-30s. Jennie stared at it for a long time. Then she turned it over. Written on the back were 4 words. Louis Sodder. I love Brother Frankie. Pray for me. A private investigator tracked the photograph to a postal route in Central or South America. That was as far as the trail went. George Sodder died in 1969. He never learned what happened to his children. Jennie continued the search until her own death in 1989. Before she died, she had the yard excavated one final time. They found nothing. The billboard came down after Jennie died, 44 years after the fire.
3 theories have circulated for 80 years. Theory 1. The children died in the fire and the investigation was simply incompetent. Rural West Virginia in 1945 had limited forensic capabilities. Against this, the vertebra placed in rubble after the fact, the cut phone line, the ladder that disappeared, the truck that wouldn't start. Theory 2. Organized crime. Someone set the fire and took the children as punishment for George's politics. The children were raised under different names and never told the truth. Against this, no demand was ever made. No contact ever came. Theory 3. The photograph is real. One or more of the Sodder children survived, were raised somewhere in South America, and one of them found a way, decades later, to send a message home. The photograph was never authenticated. The trail ended. The 5 Sodder children would be in their 80s and 90s today. Their siblings grew old waiting. Most of them are gone now too. The house on Christmas Eve Road in Fayetteville is a parking lot. Route 16 no longer has a billboard. But the case file has never been officially closed. Because their
Next case, 2 men climbed a hill in Brazil in 1966 wearing handmade lead masks over their eyes. They were found dead 3 days later. No cause of death was ever established. The note they left behind has never been explained.